What's the creepiest / most unexplained thing you've seen in broad daylight? My high school girlfriend and her family all talked about the ghost in their house and always said that it sounded like a man wearing boots walking down the hallway. We were all very close, and one day when they weren't home I just walked in and went to my G/F's room and laid on her bed while I waited for them to get back. A man in boots walked slowly right down the hall and right past the door to G/F's room where I was laying. I did the next logical thing and just climbed out of her bedroom window. They showed up a few minutes later and asked why I was just standing around in the front yard and why I hadn't just gone in. I told them that I heard the ghost and climbed out of the window to escape. They laughed their freaking heads off. Broad daylight, totally creepy and very unexplained. I was walking past a church one day when I was about 15, and standing in front of one of the graves was a cowboy dressed head to toe in pure white. He looked straight out of a movie. His hat, shirt, waistcoat, trousers and boots were also white, like an incredibly clean white, as if he'd only just put them on. He was white, had short brown hair, stubble, and was an average looking guy. I kept staring at him, blinked, and then he was just fucking gone. I live in the UK, so it was weird to see anyone resembling a cowboy anyway. I don't know if it was my mind playing tricks on me, but I could swear he was there. He looked so real. When I was a teenager, I was at a friend's house when his parents and family were not home. I was on his back porch tying my shoes, then I went back into his house. Tying my shoes, a 20 seconds action. No. I walk inside and his entire family is back home and they're sitting at the kitchen table eating dinner, and they ask me what I am doing here. They're staring at me like I am crazy and asking why I just walked into their house. I ask for the time, they tell me it is 6:30 p.m. I lost an entire hour doing a 20 seconds action. To this day I still have no clue what happened or where the time went. I once had a dream I was walking solo down a familiar dirt path towards a wooded area. Side note, the path felt familiar to me in the dream. I had never been down this path before. As I walked toward the wooded area, the feeling of familiarity changed and the path ended at an old abandoned cemetery under the tree canopy. The familiarity suggested the path continued and the cemetery should not be there. I was drawn into the cemetery toward a specific grave. The detail was vivid. There was an old stone bench next to a sunken grave. The headstone had an angel on top. The remaining wing had a pine needle dangling off, hanging from a cobweb, drifting in the breeze. It was peaceful and quiet. I immediately woke up and felt like the dream was calling me back. I felt oddly connected. The jolt from waking up was so startling I decided to write the dream down. Fast forward a couple of years. I was considering buying a house with my girlfriend. After we reached a house we were considering, the realtor called and said she was running late. While waiting, we walked the outside of the house. Behind the house, we noticed a path past the overgrown grass going into some woods. To kill time, we decide to walk the path to the trees. While walking along and enjoying the sun on my face, I was hit with an intense feeling of déjà vu. I knew this place. As we reached the woods, there it was, the abandoned cemetery. It was the same cemetery in my dream. I told my girlfriend I'd visited this place in a dream and described specific details down to the pine needle. She thought I was trying to pull a stupid prank until she saw the sunken grave, missing wing and stone bench, and even the pine needle hanging off the angel's wing. She immediately walked back toward our car. The entire experience was a copy-paste of my dream with the exception of my girlfriend being present. Later that day, we were back at my house. She asked me how I knew all that detail. I let her read the dream I wrote down. I described the path, trees, cemetery and weather perfectly. She refused to ever talk about the experience again. That was around 20 years ago. The experience still haunts me to this day. Me, my two brothers and our uncle were running down the lake in his boat on a beautiful summer's day. Blue sky as far as the eye can see. until we looked towards the North Shore line, and saw a smallish passenger jet flying low, until it went below the tree line and disappeared. We were flabbergasted, because our family has been in the area for over 100 years and there is not an airstrip in that direction, anywhere. There was no loud bang. No fireball, nothing. No way it had crashed. We still don't know how it was possible, that it did what it did. I was maybe 14 to 15 years old and I would frequently sleep on the couch in our living room. We lived in a typical suburban colonial where the couch faced the front door. Since I could remember, we never locked our doors, as we lived in a pretty decent city. I remember one night I was still awake at 3 to 4 a.m. listening to music, when I saw a car quickly pull up our driveway. I then saw a very skinny, tall man open our front door, stand in the hallway for 20 to 30 seconds facing my direction, then leave the house and drive away quickly. I remember telling my parents and entire family this in the morning, and they did not believe me. My dad insisted it was him, as he'd leave for work in the early hours of the morning. I know I was young, but I also know that was not my dad, as my dad was stockier and shorter than this man. Freaks me out to this day to think what this man was going to do. I guess this sort of fits. Used to be an outside claims adjuster in my 20s and had a particularly shitty territory in a major city. One day I was walking to a shop to write an estimate and noticed a condom filled with poop on the sidewalk. Stared at it for a minute or so, thinking about the decisions I had made in my life that led to that point. Between the poop condom and the job overall taking its toll on me mentally, I started looking for a new career when I got home that night. I'm not sure why this came to mind, but I still haven't been able to figure it out. Shortly after I'd started a new job, I accidentally jumped the wrong bus home. It was the same line as my usual bus, but it ran an adjunct route that dropped me a mile or two from where I needed to be. It was a Simpsons moment. The bus driver turned around and told me, "This is the end of the line, you have to get off." I began my trek to the park and ride and took my liberties cutting through various vacant and business lots. One such lot was a construction supply yard, full of cement forms and heavy equipment. I definitely didn't belong there, so I was feeling a bit on edge as I crept through. I saw something out of the corner of my eye that startled me so badly that I yelped. It was an animal roughly the size of a small dog with long ears like a rabbit, but it was standing on its hind legs. And when it saw me, it took off, jumping the way something like a kangaroo would, bounding large distances with just its hind legs and its front legs tucked in. It was fast and it disappeared so quickly that it made the moment all the more surreal. I think some of us know the feeling. It was like I'd seen something I wasn't supposed to have seen. I wrote it off as being some kind of very large jackrabbit at the time, but when I got home and did a little research, jackrabbits don't move that way, nor are there any species that even remotely resemble that in my area, northern United States. Maybe it was some kind of escaped exotic animal? It creeped me out and helped me cover the long walk back to my car that much more quickly. In college I lived on the 11th floor in an apartment with no balcony, and it was about 4:30 in the afternoon. I watched a man walk into my apartment about 10 seconds before I walked in, and habitually bolted the door behind me. It locked automatically on the outside. I was living with 3 roommates at the time, so I just figured they were having guests over, no biggie. I put my stuff on the couch and went towards the back bedroom to say hi to whoever came over. My roommates had no idea what I was talking about. It wasn't a big apartment, but I searched everywhere. My roommates stayed in the back bedroom sufficiently freaked out. There was no one else in the apartment and the door was still bolted from the inside. When I was a little girl, I was playing in my room one morning with my sister. I looked out my window and saw a man staring in at us. I told my sister to leave my room and ran to get my father. He didn't believe me and thought I was crazy. Needless to say, I had an awful hard time sleeping that night. Throughout my childhood, I'd hear what sounded like footsteps outside at night, or my parents' car doors opening long after they had went to sleep. Several years later, I looked at our house on Google Maps. I always assumed we lived by ourselves in the woods, far from anyone else. It turns out there was a small house that looked like it was being lived in only a few hundred yards in the woods from us. My family was less skeptical of my crazy stories after I showed them that. When I was 15, my family went on a cross-country trip and one night we camped in the Grand Canyon. We went to a ranger lecture around 6 p.m. This is summer, so it was still pretty light when we were walking back. We went off the trail as a shortcut and after walking a ways noticed a light up ahead. As we drew closer there was a man sitting at a desk in the woods with a lantern. Just a full wood office-sized desk in the middle of the woods. I distinctly remember he had long sideburns and feeling like he was dressed like a man from the 1800s. My dad backed us down towards the trail and we went on our way. The man never made a peep or looked up or acknowledged us. There were 2 adults and 3 teenagers and we all remember the event really clearly. I don't believe in ghosts or spirits but have no explanation for what I saw. As I got older I figured I was misremembering but everyone else in my family says they saw the same thing. I was driving down I-4 from Tampa to Disney and I saw someone walking in broad daylight pushing a baby stroller which was super odd. As we approached I realized said person was wearing one of those spandex pink onesies. As I got even closer the person was pushing a 50s style carriage with a mannequin painted black in it. Weird intersection near my house that about 3 months ago started to be torn down for being too dangerous, replaced by a roundabout. Funny thing is, it was a normal intersection 4 directions, 2 lanes in 2 lanes out with dedicated left turn lanes. Except, just about every week, someone crashed there. Every month we'd hear of a near fatality or worse. Police couldn't figure it out so they started to petition for them to change it. They changed the light pattern and reduced speeds, which brought total crashes down but here's the fucked thing, serious injuries tripled. It got so bad they posted cops permanently to monitor the intersection, and what they noticed was, if they watched the intersection, non-stop, nothing would happen but the instant you'd take your eyes off it someone would speed through a red light or make a left turn on red. They then finally tried one last thing, remove 2 of the lights, in favor of stop signs on one of the roads. First day there was a multi-car pile-up, second day there was a minivan rollover, third day the mayor's daughter hit someone going 50. Day 4, intersection was closed for construction. I grew up in a pretty rural area of the United States on a decent-sized corn/soybeans farm that is about half and half farmland and forests. Naturally my friends and I really enjoyed goofing off in the woods as kids right up until we all left for college or other post-high school endeavors. The land is kind of rolling hills, but nothing crazy, and most of the land in every direction we had thoroughly explored. There really wasn't many nooks or crannies left, but hands down the creepiest thing that ever happened was when I was out in the woods alone, of course, on a bright hot sunny August day. Now the forest behind the farm had an almost bowl-shaped topography to it, in that the middle was a depression that for most of the year was a swamp, which was very difficult to get through. Like I said though, I'd seen just about everything for a good distance into those woods, including this cool old blue car from the 1940s. It was some kind of Studebaker, that had been parked by the edge of the swamp at one point long ago. However, the borders of the swamp had shifted many times and on this particular day the car was sitting in swamp water almost up to its windows. This wasn't anything new, but what was new was the man, woman, sitting in the driver's seat. Whoever they were, they had long dirty blonde hair with colorful but dirty streaks almost like painted in. The best way I could describe it would be like if a girl painted her hair like an old times clown and then fell in a mud puddle. Of course this freaked me the fuck out as soon as I saw it, heart pounding, adrenaline pumping, the whole 9 yards. I was facing the driver's side of the car, and while I was scared shitless initially, I scrambled to the left towards, and somewhat away from, the front of the car to put some distance between me and the car, but I didn't outright bolt. Again, it was a bright, sunny, beautiful summer day. Nothing to be too afraid of, I mean, I thought I was pretty confident in my youth that I could outrun whatever was in that car. I peeked around the corner of a tree, and with my new vantage point, it was immediately clear that it was just some old JCPenney mannequin with a wig on. Still creepy as fuck, as it hadn't been there ever before, but I had to admit whoever put it there had got me. Then it turned its head and those pupil-less cold eyes looked right at me. Long story short, I Usain bolted all the way back to my house and locked everything down like Fort Knox. A few weeks later, after my friends telling me I was full of shit, we went back to the car, again in the daylight, and it was still there. Numbers breed courage, I guess, and we went right up to the car and looked inside. It was definitely just a dummy, and it had some kind of MacGyvered fishing line contraption that one could crudely control the dummy head with. The line ran out the other side of the car and around back of a tree a little ways into the swamp. Someone was there that day, and they knew I was looking at the car. When I was 4 and my brother was 10, he stayed home from school and my mom left him to babysit me. She left numbers on the fridge and stuff and off to work. I don't know how much longer after she left it happened, but we heard our dog barking viciously, which was completely out of character for her. At this point my brother and I are in the kitchen waiting for our biscuits in the oven, and the sound of Fluffy barking gets incredibly louder, which meant she was in the front lawn around the side of the kitchen entrance. The gate that lead to the back was a little further down the side of the house, and whoever was outside was in the gap in between, out of Fluffy's reach. My brother opens the kitchen curtains to see if he could get a view as to what's going on. Right as he opened the curtains, there was a man looking right down at us, almost like he expected my brother to open the curtains. The doorknob began to rattle and my brother ran to the living room and grabbed the phone, taking me with him. As soon as he got on the phone, the rattle stopped. My mom came home and at the same time the police showed up for a statement. They never found the guy. My brother remembers it as vividly as I do, and it's the creepiest thing I've ever lived through.
In this little shop of horrors, that's how we get down. Yeah, enter, the projects on the prairie, scary. Greet you at the gate with Bloody Marys. Blood, a rail full of blood. Back to the cemetery, get more blood. Standing on the grave, drinking blood, smoking bones. We seen a crew of ghouls running by with stolen tombstones. With Hell's Angels on the chase, they lust to bust a black skull, want you embrace. They tie you up in chains and they stomp on your face. They go to purgatory and they beat the fucking case. I look around, man.